Yes.
Absolutely. Lucky I've spent so much time in India and I completely understand.
Some things we can't control. I think that's why spiritual practices are more abundantly needed to have even day to day patience and survival around. Yes.
Anicca.
Ji, Anicca. Yes.
No better way to step in episode 10 than by having the enchanting Bhagyashree on the show. Bhagyashree's early childhood Indian village life was nurtured by community, elders, and ancient wisdom. She grew up on the foundation of values and a strong moral compass, which guided her towards higher education and ultimately a deep spiritual path. Receiving scholarships, living away from home, travelling the world, all the while holding on to the dream of an inward journey. A twist of fate brought her to an ashram in Rishikesh, but it was a saint at the river Ganga that opened the door to her remembering. This is one of the most beautiful stories I've had the pleasure of listening to, and for anyone looking for the deeper answers, this one's for you. I'll be sharing my reflections after the podcast, but until then, sit back and enjoy the enchanting tale of Bhagyashree. Bhagyashree, thank you so much for coming on.
Namaste. Thank you for inviting us, Taylor ji.
My absolute pleasure. Let's take it back to the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the central part of India in Maharashtra, which is close to Mumbai, Bombay. And I grew up in a town partially, also in a village, a very small village. So growing up with cousins, growing up with extended families, it was quite intense experience as a child. You have so many memories, you see so many faces, but yes, that's much of Maharashtra, a hustling, busy state of India.
And what were some of the intensities that you experienced growing up in the village?
Growing up in the village, I would like to recall and also hold the respect for the work my grandmother has done in Indian rural villages. Being a widow, she was working very closely with the education system at grassroots level, helping women understand even childbirth, ensuring that the nutrition is met for those who are not able to afford the regular schooling, education, and food for their children. So I would be like her, a small assistant. She was a teacher. I would follow her everywhere and just see her. I think very early influence where I saw a woman very strong. That has been my grandmother. She was widowed at 26 with 4 daughters. After which, her father-in-law, mother-in-law encouraged her to continue her education to college. So very quite progressive family for a small village. And then she later started working, helping other people in social work. She was a teacher. And when we would go to her, our time was usually being her assistant, helping her in all the work she did, and seeing children from different underprivileged backgrounds, seeing the way they sit, they eat, sometimes malnourished, the hands would be thinner, the body structure, the malnourishment would show up, and the way she would weigh them, just like we would weigh potatoes or vegetables, she would take the baby and weigh, and then she would tell the mother, you're not supposed to do this, you're supposed to give these biscuits, and she would give the protein biscuits provided by the government. And I would just look at her in awe, that how many things she does with so much love, and even when she has to say something to discipline somebody, that also comes from a space of love. So very early influence of a very strong woman as a teacher and as a servant of the society was in the form of my grandmother.
Wow, how inspiring, as you said. And did you grow up with any brothers and sisters?
I did. I do have one sister, no brothers. So ours is a family of all women. From father's side, I have all sister cousins, also from my mother's side. Only one distant cousin, and another ones, but mostly women in the family. Growing up with brothers and sisters was a conscious choice made by my parents. Although we were just me and my sister, they wanted to bring everybody from the smaller towns into the big cities for education, and I grew up with my cousins from my aunts and also my uncles. So we were always 5 or 6 children in the home. That made us appreciate what we have and share better with everyone.
Wow. And your relationship with your parents growing up? What was that like?
Yes, yeah. I was very close to my father from the beginning. In the family system, in cultural India, especially when you come from a Vedic family, the importance to have a son, as the first child, it's still very, very significant, because then you get the rights to the fire ceremony and rituals and other things. So without the birth of a son, you cannot enter into the Vedic traditions and the rites, the passage to rites, as we say. So although being born as a daughter, my father did not hold himself back. Of course, he then was not into the ritualistic part of Hinduism, but he ensured that I carried most of the teachings and learnings of the family, of the bloodline. So very free space to grow up, still very connected with my father. I think very positive masculinity right from the childhood, and his participation in all the small things we did, even as daughters. Such a free man, Taylor ji. You don't see an hint of ego or that patriarchy in the family, and till date he often calls me dada. Dada refers to the son, the elder brother, or the dada. So he still calls me amongst all of them as his eldest son. Still he has that perspective that I fulfill everything as a son would for him. So
Wow.
much of it is his connection with him.
That's beautiful. And so, how long and how old were you till you stayed in the village? And then you said you got schooling in the biggest city?
Yes, so about 4 months every year. We had longer school breaks. So half part of the year was in the town with my parents. Their life was filled with hustle. Father would work, and mother was a homemaker in the initial years, but she had her own catering outlet, like a small restaurant. She would deliver home packed food. So food, serving, people coming home, learning how to offer a glass of water if somebody is at the door, or ask their name, or to make an inquiry of why they are here, was very early. About 3-4 years we were very comfortable with asking questions as a child and getting information even from strangers.
Wow. And so, when you went away from home and went to school, at what age did that first occur? And how was that, being away from the family unit?
Going into the school, the regular mainstream schooling was very different, Taylor ji, because although we came from a family rich in values, the cultural systems, we were still a very humble family, with one person working in the family and taking the major economic burden of the family, trying to make things available for us, but nothing was ever in excess. It was balanced, it was right there, but it's not something, there was nothing you could demand beyond what you had, because you were already sharing it with other family members as well. So growing up, this made me realize very early that when you're raised by kind parents, and when you start observing it as a child, somewhat you stop asking anything from them, because you already know they are doing for others as well. And when you go to the school, especially with the kind of fortunately good marks I had, I was in very good school on scholarship as well. And the children I studied with were from very affluent families. So they had much more resources, They had much more things at their disposal, like a tuition apart from the school. It was a luxury. This at times would make me feel, what is it that they do where it's so easy for them to have everything, not out of feeling you know not having a share of it or wanting it, but just amused. What creates this imbalance? And I think, Taylor ji, I saw that greatly even with my grandmother, the disparities of the same human life with a certain set of people. It could be in a village, or sometimes myself when I would be in a better institution through education, but would not match at other levels the children could. So disparities, human life, and the differences of human life experiences, very, very early recorded.
And in saying that, how do you feel that your early life experience with your grandmother, your father, your relationship with your father, how do you feel that developed within you, and what was the biggest takeaway from your childhood experience?
The biggest takeaway was to be grateful and humble. So when I would go with her, especially the grandmother, I would see she's helping on other people as a widow, and that naturally meant my mother was raised without a father, which means she did not have the access to a good healthy side of masculinity. However, she was married to a man who balanced it out really well for her. So seeing their marriage, I think family systems, the importance of family systems and parents early on, and how as humans we create support systems for next generations, for each other.
Wow, that's beautiful. And just for all the people listening who may have never been to India, is the family system a huge importance within the structure of society?
Yes, Taylor ji, because we believe the family system exists to protect the childhood. Two adults may not need a marriage, but any human growing, any child growing needs that sun and moon energy equally. Just that way that the family systems that we were discussing, they play an important role in the Hindu philosophy as well, in the Indian knowledge systems. When we look at the family systems, they are powerful community-centric experiences. One is individualistic human experience, other is a community-centric life experience. So what happened was, when people would be married, they would have an entry to the society, and then they could have children, which meant marriage came with a certain responsibility. You cannot abandon the child, you cannot abandon the women, both. Naturally, the child could get the best of the both, sun energy as well as the moon energy. In many dualist philosophies as well, Dvaita, we see that. The Mata and Pita, father and mother, equally both are required for the nourishment of the soul, the spiritual self as well. Now, as any other animal would take care of their young one for a few months or a year, humans are the only ones who tend to hold their children for a longer time. And that's why we are in much debt and gratitude to our parents, because their only job was to help us be alive for the first 8 years. If they taught us how to eat and how to walk and continue on earth, that is all that was needed from their end. But if they go beyond that and they try to have a childhood which is free from trauma, worldly risks, as would happen in a forest or a jungle, when a young one is born, the animal would try to protect the young one, the herd would try to protect the young one, so no other animal would come and eat it away. So role of parents and the family is to protect and nurture the very important years of human life, the early years, so that you become balavata, or strengthened through the body, strengthened through decision making. As in bigger families, you see many people making many mistakes. So by the child by the time the child grows up, you already know you don't want to do this for sure, or if you end up doing something like this, what would be the consequences. And coming from a small community, when you enter the world, it's not a surprise. You just say, oh, this friend reminds me of that cousin I have, because then you're able to be familiar with the caution and the way you have to transact with them. So family systems were a peek into the world, and at times they were transactionally also doing very well. In case a child loses the parents, since the child grows up with other children and siblings and uncles and aunts, the child would eventually get inheritance from uncles and aunts and everybody else. So economic security, emotional learning, and physical stability, along with that then the teaching of human life or whatever would follow would come.
Wow, that's incredibly beautiful.
Yes.
As you described, particularly about the woman and then being a member of society once she's then married, is growing up in India, is there a lot of weight that is carried through expectations and roles that play out?
Yes, up till recently, yes. So when we look at India as a nation, it's just been around 75 years that the country is free, and the first task they have is to ensure that the youth looks back at the early culture. So present youth in India, when they look back, the colonial culture, and the 80s and 90s and pops and album, everything is there, but they have no connection with their past, farther past, 2 generations behind, where the family structures were healthy. With the world wars and with the colonization for 200 years at least, the family systems became more economy centric, which were value centric. Now this meant even marriage brought certain economic security, even for the male and even for the female. Because with the war you have a lot of scarcity. In scarcity, of course, you have famine and other things that follow with disturbances at the societal level. So survival was also better with a family. So for survival and economic security, one started looking at marriage. Till date, we do feel pressurized at times. But then when you look at it biologically, I see that it is very nice to have a family, have a partner first, because then there are some parts of your nature you are willing to change from somebody you like. It's just like the most unpleasant things said about you to correct you, but they just come from the most beautiful face. So you say, all right, that's okay, I'm willing to make a change. That's nature's way. We call it Maya. So Maya, would say, okay, you're not good enough or you need to change this. So that's the only person you would still listen to. But with other people, you may not do that. So role of a partner in shaping ourselves into the most authentic version of ourselves and reminding us time and again that we need to work on certain aspects. So therefore marriage then becomes an institution where the desire is not the basis, but a value system and shared experience of life, where 2 individuals who look at life in the same direction want to come together and help each other create that safe space for themselves.
Wow, beautifully said. When you were growing up, was there a lot of talk around marriage? As a young woman growing up in India, is there talk about your future? Is there freedoms? How does that play out?
Yes, there is talk about marriage, especially you attend a lot of weddings from early on, and then when you attend a wedding, you listen to all the talk and all the gossip and different kinds of weddings. So I think an average Indian child would attend at least 20 weddings by the time the child is 6 or 7 or 8 years old. That's too much. That's how okay, first you realize a wedding means you get to have good food and everybody dances and you get new clothes. That's why you enjoy the wedding. Then once you enter teenage, you realize, oh, this is some serious business. Marriage or wedding means you are supposed to then change your family and accept new family or create a new family. Then you start thinking more about what is the role of creation of a family? Why is it needed? Then do you choose the partner? Is, like I said, having a very progressive father, that was not a worry for me.
Wow.
But in other spaces, of course, you need to think about the varnas, the community that you come from, because in India we had a unique method of preserving genetics. We had 4 different sets of genetics depending on natural abilities within a person, craftsmanship, or swordsman, or just instinct to protect or instinct to learn. So depending on your instinct, you would marry somebody in the same instinctive group. Now what would happen is, in case there would even be a general disease, like we say a community level pandemic or some kind of epidemic, since the gene pool was so diverse, one of the genes would get affected but not all of them would get affected, which now has started thinning out. We don't have that genetic pool anymore, reserve anymore. Otherwise then you had to marry within the gotra systems, within those genetic pools, because marrying there would mean longevity. You would have people with the similar nature, similar instincts, so less friction, and lesser the friction, more the longevity, even in human relationships.
Wow. So would each individual know the genetic pool, or would they go seek an advisor to guide them on who to marry and how to marry?
Yes. Now, from the last 3 generations, it has a sharp decline, like I mentioned, after the World War, from early 1920s up till now. So these 100 years are a complete dismantling of the genetic pool and the genetic systems. However, since the world has now become a more open space, many Indians travel abroad, they work abroad. We are very comfortable now with the exchange of this gene pool. However, in some communities, like the community I have grown up in, or we say the priest community, the brahmanas, especially the ones who have to carry forth the knowledge, we still see the matriman, pitriman and acharyaman, meaning the mother's family. So when the mother has a gotra, she knows her bloodline, we easily know what were the genetics, the longevity, the telomeres. The modern science is now working on telomeres. So gotras, or talking about your first ancestor, would give a peek into how the people perhaps died also. Were there major diseases in your family? So mother should know this bloodline. She should come from a bloodline which is physically healthy and which has a steady value system, and more good values extended beyond humanity, where they do some donations, whether they do some spiritual activities, or they facilitate other people. And father's side also, you have to come from the same genetics, and teacher also should be of the same genetics. For example, if we have a community, Kshatriya, the warrior genetics in India, the mother has to be a warrior, because if she has to give birth to a king, she has to go to the battlefield during her pregnancy and conception, because that's how the baby on the battlefield will learn about war and has to accept that unpredictability. So father, mother both would be from the protective instincts, and also teacher then would be Kshatriya. This was the earlier system. But now that we have, since we are no more close-knit families, we've become more nuclear families, a child hardly sees anybody apart from parents. And when you even see your own parents closely at times, the boundary fades. You end up judging them as an adult. Now many times children don't want to have a marriage like their parents. Now having a marriage like their parents then naturally translates into not marrying within the bloodline or within the community. So many factors affect the choices and decisions in the modern times, and you still are fearful whether you're going to get it right.
Absolutely. It's incredible how much intention was put into it, though.
Yes.
Every aspect looked at and everything factored in is a way
Yes.
of union and development and really connecting on those aligned values.
Yes.
Wow.
And if you had to even choose your potential mate, the entire family would go to visit their home. So, seeing, like we say, the apple wouldn't fall far from the tree. So you see the complete family, and while you're busy focusing on your potential companion, other people are noticing the smaller things within the family, the behavior, certain questions. So you have a very high-fetched intelligence that comes within the family because they know their own child as well. So when they come home, they discuss, oh, we went to this family, it's a great family, but our child has so many drawbacks, and perhaps our child would be a misfit for them. It's not that they are to be rejected, but our child would be a misfit for them. They may have a better family for them. So parents knew sometimes that their child could also be a problem, not to disturb others. So they would say, no, maybe my son or my daughter is zesty, fiery. So such a calm boy, the boy will have lot of sacrifice to be done. So let's find somebody on similar tone. These were the efforts put in by uncles, aunts, and everybody.
Wow. That's beautiful. And you mentioned spirituality. When you were growing up in the village and with your family, was there a lot of spiritual rituals and rites and people really deeply connected to their practice?
Some instances, yes. Like we have a village deity. So the entire village goes to the deity in case of harvest, in case of rain, monsoon. So very natural gods, you can say, where the deification of nature, seeing deities in the nature, ecology connected with spirituality, become the first experiences when we grow up in very smaller communities like a village. Because then you worship the cow, you worship the river. Whatever you worship, you naturally end up protecting it. So where now in ecology we see there are marker species, or you need to declare a certain species as important, it is naturally done in a village just by calling it a deity, or don't enter this part of the forest, it is reserved for the temple. So nobody goes and builds houses there. So growing up in a village, ecology as a deity, the deification of nature, was my early understanding of spirituality as a child. Okay, rain is God, sun is God. Then what is not God? Stone is God. Okay, the cow is also God. I would count, there are so many gods. Except us, everybody is God. That would be my thought.
Wow. But
in the village, yes.
And so at what age did you actually leave the village? Was there the same similar systems of schooling in the West where it's what we call primary school and then high school and then on to university?
Yes. Around high school. So the frequent visits to village then stopped, because then the study also enhanced. And around the class 6th or 7th, when we just entered high school, I changed my school. Prior to that, I was in a regular Hindu school, English, which had English as a medium of instruction. But then I entered the convent. Now entering convent meant studying the Bible and then at home studying the Gita. I was, and my sister as well, we were the only ones who felt very new to the culture of studying with nuns and praying, offering prayers at the chapel and studying the Bible, and also coming home and studying the Gita. So something shifted around that time where I became more open, and the idea of God really excited me, Taylorji, because then I knew it's not just the small child or an perhaps illiterate farmer who's looking for God, but there is somebody else apart from this village, this town, this nation, in other part of the world who is also looking for God, and they are also talking about God. Yes, without form or those things you don't understand, formless nature of God. But then you get really excited when you see everybody is looking for God, which means once I finished my exams and get into a good university, I should start looking for God too. Interesting person to meet.
And not in a way of comparison, but what's it like studying the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita at the same time? Did it feel that there was correlation between the two, or just it's nice to know a deeper philosophy and understanding of those principles?
Certain practices like the value systems, the do's and don'ts, we have the commandments, and then we have certain ways where we conduct in a family system. The sin, what is a sin? All of these things felt very familiar. So I just thought the language changed. But yes, you were just supposed to do what you did at home. For me, in a convent school, you can't, with the nuns being very strict, you can't have your hair open, your nails have to be really short. And I said, okay, this we do at home, so not really much a bother for me. But children who came from privileged families, perhaps, the parents would meet them once in 2 years or 3 years, really rich kids. When they would be at the convent, they really had a tough time, because then that upbringing of extravagance, sometimes since no parent to care for them, the discipline aspect was missing. So then they became rebellious at times. But for me, it just felt a continuation of what happened home. And studying the Bible, then studying about different saints, understanding the idea of God, and all of us should pray. Then the question was, why prayer is needed? How do I know what has come to me from God every single day? From where is it coming? All of these questions started rising up. Also, my uncle played a significant role around these times, because he was closely associated with a monastic order in India, and going to the monastery with him a few times, at least over the weekends, made me realize that the monks are the people who are full time looking for God. Like, I go to the school and I hear about God. At home, there is somebody celebrating a festival, saying, okay, we are in gratitude to God. But there is somebody who's full time looking for God, and that person is called as a monk. So these very small realizations as a child, although I went to the monastery just to eat the sweet they gave after, the chanting was not much of interest, but all of this, and the vision, and the ashram, and the big spaces, and the monks chanting, the kirtans, as a woman growing, they instilled deep faith and hope in me that I have to be fearless. It's not just a father I see in person. This father and this mother represent something higher. If they are at a microcosmic level, there is father and mother at a macrocosmic level, of which they are just representatives. So I wrote my board examinations. We have the most difficult examinations with this faith that I have no fear. There is somebody bigger who's going to take care of things. So yes, faith really helped. Naturally developed, without force.
Yes. What a wonderful lead. What a wonderful connection to have an uncle to take you to these spaces where you can really see, feel, and connect with
Yes.
this higher power on your own terms, and see it as such a source of inspiration.
Yes.
Wow.
Taylor G, I would also like to add that growing up, sometimes there was scarcity, even when it came to food, when it came to resources. But seeing that helped me. It really made me appreciate what was there. So there were times where we were not sure how much we would have the resources and the food supplies to last more than 2 days. And imagine one 8-year-old girl and another 6-year-old both trying to figure out now what to do along with the parents and bigger families. But it did not make me bitter in any way. I don't know why, but it just felt very natural, perhaps because I had seen those malnourishment, and I had seen a lot very early on with my grandmother, that us going through it also, even if it's for a brief year, few years, it felt like that's something which is a part of life, where everybody experiences some kind of scarcity at some level. It could be material, spiritual, emotional. Some level you are not given some things, or you have to wait for some things in life. This is what was another than realization.
That's a beautiful point. I think that And as you said, scarcity can teach you so much.
Yes.
Even just
Yes.
deepen your appreciation and gratitude for what you actually have and not focusing on what you
Yes.
don't.
Yes.
Wow. And so after the convent, is that then when you went to university?
Yes, I did go to the university. Then also, that was a question, because to get into higher courses, you really need to pay a lot of donation to colleges. And now already I was the bigger one and others were in line. I decided, okay, I will not opt for a science backed field. Then I would like to go for in commerce or economics and accounting. That is the path then I chose. So those decisions of choosing your course, but parents never said you don't go for it. But as a child, you become aware that a certain fee would be too much then for the parent also to take. And then you say, it doesn't matter which course I am into, I know what I'm going to score well anywhere it is. So then I ended up taking mathematics and economics, macroeconomics, business economics, ethics and other things, business management basically.
Wow. And were you looking forward to university? I mean, it sounds like it's quite a privilege.
Very much,
quite an opportunity.
very much. I can say if father would have had the means, he would certainly send me abroad for better education. But I'm happy now he did not. Otherwise, then I would not be on the path that I am. So I think that was also very, very important for us to go through university at a level where we still had to strive hard, because getting into the university, then having good grades is also important. Every time you don't have good grades, you can't go beyond that. So I had good grades in my first, we say the graduation, the bachelor's degree. Then I naturally earned a scholarship for my master's. So I was very happy, happiest day. That was the day I also got a first mobile phone from my father. His phone, his used phone, but a phone to go to the college, because the college was very far away. So I had to take a bus, then walk about 1 hour every day. That would be roughly around 4 to 5 kilometers one way, because that is the ticket. I could not afford back and forth all the way.
Wow. And how was it setting that exam for the scholarship? Did you feel there was a lot of pressure, or did you feel that you were protected and that this was...
Protected, Taylorji. I cannot tell you this feeling, but I very early on, around the class 9, that is 15, 16 years, I knew I am taken care. I don't know how, but I just knew there is someone who's holding me and I just need to get through what is happening every day. Ultimately, I am taken care. So this faith was so strong, and the belief that there is the higher energy, the higher power that nourishes all of us. That is the father or mother, whatever you say, for all of us.
Wow. What a powerful moment to know that you were guided and protected, and then sit the exam and then get accepted as a scholarship into the Masters.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
How was it studying your Masters?
Studying Masters was with a job. Then I started working. Part-time was the Masters evening college. Morning I started working. My first salary was more than my age. I was just 20 when I started working, and it was 25,000 Indian rupees around that time. And then I call up my mother and I say, I don't know what to do with a lot of money, because all my expenses get over in only 5,000 rupees. So what do I do with the rest? 20 now, it's too much money for me. So you see, really at 20-year-old, getting into a very good company for a job, which is Cox and Kings. I'm sure you've heard of the name Cox and Kings. It's one of the first travel companies in the world, and that's the company I worked with while I was doing my masters in Chennai, another part of India. The scholarship took me to that course and that city. So then I ring her up and I say, I don't know what to do with this. Is a lot of money. So that 20-year-old is still scared, because knows that what is a lot of money. And then she said, oh no, don't worry, that money is for you. You can use it the way you want to.
Wow.
So then I remember buying my first scooter. And riding a vehicle for a woman, I always say, is very important, because it then adds to the sense of freedom. When you have your first maybe bicycle or even scooter. So buying a scooter all by myself in a in a different city with a different language. In India, every state has a different language. So those things were very helpful.
Is it common for women in India to have their own mode of transport?
Now, yes. 30 years back, no. Now, yes. Now, very much common. But when I studied, that was around 2014. 2014 or so. So 2014 was the time then I got access to my first scooter, and it felt like God sent, some vehicle where I could just go anywhere. Interestingly, there was a place in Chennai, Ecology, called as the Ananda Yoga Center. Now see, I have left the roots of my family. I am thousands of kilometers away in a different place, and when I take out my scooty, nothing catches my eye but a meditation center, and that is to do with Kriya Yoga. So now I enter into this center on one of my Sundays. What to do? As a girl who's used to staying with cousins and family, I suddenly felt I have so much time, nobody around. I lived with a family, very generous family, and I was sharing the home with them, and they took care of many things. But the scooter, in your early 20s, you want to go out and explore, but the scooter stopped at a meditation center, and I thought, let me see what is this Ananda Sangha. Ananda is joy and bliss, so community of joy and bliss. So I thought, let me see what is this Ananda Sangha in Chennai. Then I park the vehicle, then I go inside on a random Sunday of my first month of job, and I start meditating there with that small community. When I go to the Kriya Yoga ashram, I see a portrait of Lahari Mahasaya, one of the gurus in the tradition of Kriya Yoga, and I recall this is the picture I saw as a 3-year-old in the village, in my grandmother's home. And since he has a very peculiar expression in that picture, I would often run away as a child. I thought he's looking at me, as a child you are fearful of big portraits. And I see the same portrait in a distant land, and I say, I have the same grandfather taking care of me here as well. The same guru taking care of me. So such moments in life where you're working, you're also earning and learning together, you're supporting your family financially, but since the teenage and early 20s are very crucial years, and because you have been raised in a functional family system, you know what are the boundaries for your own self, where you're not vulnerable. Nobody can take advantage of any situation you would be in.
Definitely. And so would you go back to this center every chance you had to meditate?
Yes, very much, yes.
Wow.
And then even the ashram where my uncle was the monarch, I found out. So the place I moved into, that actually became as the moment where I leave home, just like a monk would leave home at the age of 20. And now what happens is, I am working, but I am actively in more spiritual places. There's Madras Sanskrit College where I take up then further learning. There is Kalakshetram, another university center for arts and Indian classical dance. So with all the time I had, Taylorji, in my early 20s, I ensured I start facilitating my own quest for God, own search for God.
Wow, I mean, it sounds like such a natural calling or blessing to end up in Chennai, to have freedom and time, and also some money to be able to support your family, and then availability to connect.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And during that time, what were some of the most inspiring things for you and your path?
The Chennai itself is a very cultural place as compared to the northern part of India. You see temples, people having faith, practicing faith in their own way. So the power of living alone was something that taught me a lot, where you take care of everything you do by yourself, and you are the only responsible one. You cannot blame anybody. You can't blame your sibling. You can't ask somebody to do things for you. You have to do everything all by yourself. And that taught me, with the freedom comes responsibility. Freedom without responsibility is catastrophic, even to the individual and to the society. So let society be free, responsibly. That's the most beautiful thing that would happen to the mankind.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is. It's powerful when you realize that you also have the control, but also the choice, and it's a beautiful combination.
Yes, yes.
So then, how many years or how much time did you spend in Chennai?
About 3 years in Chennai.
Okay, wow. And did it come to, what were the reasons why that time in Chennai finished up?
The course got over. The course that I had gone for my master's, it completed. Then I stayed around for 1 more year there because the work opportunity was very good. I was promoted as well. So it felt I had become a part of that place. I had learned the local language, speaking in Tamil, and there were saints, Aluars, Nayanars. By that time, my spiritual study was slowly building up.
Wow.
So that confidence, that joy of spiritual progress made me stay longer in Chennai.
In Chennai. And so then what happened after Chennai?
Then I go back to Maharashtra, that's my place where my parents were, but I was not the same person. Of course, the family was the same. By the time the siblings had grown up, some of them had left home, cousins, they were in different places working. Then for a brief time, I was wondering now, what should I do next? Should I take up the northern part of India and maybe have an opportunity for learning or working that would give me more exposure to the world, since the first job was in travel industry, my first work where I was working, first employment. So I got an opportunity to travel abroad internationally. Now traveling internationally again as a employee, you are responsible as a tourist also, but then you see other side of the world. You are mesmerized. It makes you free to think. So it was important for me to also then go out and see the world, which I did briefly for another 3-4 years from there.
Wow, incredible. And where did your working travels take you?
I think to Europe, they took me to Southeast Asia,
Wow.
most of the places. And I understood people. They felt family, Taylorji. They felt somebody who shared same experiences or had the similar complaints about life. And the beauty of how within humans we learn to adapt to life in different climates.
Yes. Did you ever think when you were overseas, did you ever think to yourself, when you were a small girl growing up in a village, that you would ever be overseas experiencing these other cultures?
No, Taylorji. By then, for me, it was important to get a job. Being the eldest daughter, I had responsibilities that would follow. I knew that at some point there would be a wedding or a marriage, so I had to have sufficient funds, because we make food donations on the day of the wedding. You're supposed to have all the different beings, including humans, and you feed also the cows, different bhutas. Everybody participates in the celebration. That meant heavy cost of the wedding as well. So somewhere I knew that certain costs and responsibilities would come up. So first instinct was to get into a job which would secure myself and the family. I would be in a position to ensure that I take care of my marriage expenses and my sister's wedding expenses as well. That was the only goal. That then my mother and father will have something for themselves to look after. They don't have to worry much, because technology changed so fast that perhaps our fathers and our parents' generation never got the time to adapt to it with the same pace. So I was seeing, that at some point father would retire, and he had already out of his love for his own siblings, also taken on their children, and they were also like our own siblings now. They did not feel like cousins anymore. So apart from us too, if they would need any financial security, I had to be there. So these all thoughts, and only this much, if it is taken care, I think I was the happiest person.
Wow.
The responsibilities.
From such a pure thought and intention of a future projection of yourself, to then moving to Chennai to do your master's that you got a scholarship for, and stay on an extra year because you were connecting with your spiritual practice and path, and then continue to then create opportunities for yourself and then end up overseas, places like Europe, Southeast Asia, and all of these cultural experiences. I mean, it's a very incredible journey for a young girl growing up in a village with not many
Yes,
resources.
yes.
Wow. And so when you returned back then to the village and then you were after the time away from overseas, where did your life take you then?
Then slowly the spiritual calling became a major part and everything else took a backseat. I tried to appear for the administration, state examinations, civil services of the government. And I took up philosophy as an optional subject. And because that was the time where I could, now legally devote time to what my heart was longing for. And I think that then changed many, many things ahead.
So what was for 3 years overseas, was it consecutive 3 years overseas? And what was that experience like opening yourself up to the world?
Overseas was a few assignments while on the job working with different organizations, and a few times also to interact with universities in those places. But the experience was very much similar in a way. The human problems remained the same. Human expectations, more than the problems, I realized, expectations from each other, they still remain the same. Of course, the intensity reduces culturally, or there is a way that different way we have to respond to dissatisfaction or disappointment. But yes, expectations prevail at human to human level, at organization to organization level, country to country, nation to nation level, and profession to profession levels. These expectations are always there, and you need to understand what is expected out of you when the place changes, when the people change, when your role changes. I think that is something I could easily learn from those times, is to adapt quickly and to know what best can we do in this moment.
Was there a place or a particular country that really touched you in a way that surprised you?
Yes. Poland, I would say. I saw that people were more friendly, of course, and they were very curious also about the culture, and things were very similar to as we have in India. And then Switzerland, which was very different from what I was used to. It was dynamic, also the language, also you had to just show up at your best every single day. Sometime interacting with universities from Spain, again, I felt that part of Europe was again very much warm, as the sea is, as the place is. So sometimes even the geology plays an important role in how it shapes the people around it. So I always feel people around the sea are naturally very warm, and they would receive things very well. Yes, quite an experience, learning experience.
Wow. Was there any specific reason for you to finish up your work overseas?
No, not really. But then I realized that I would like to stay closer to my roots, because this is never ending. At some point, you would need that anchor, and spiritual practices, the intensity of knowing more about the questions and having time to find answers, actual answers to them. All of these things were also there somewhere behind, after the day ended, and I wanted to make more time to it. That was only possible back home in India for me.
Wow. And how was it returning back home?
Returning back was a different person. I think every time I was home, I would carry so many things collected over the year. Sometimes I got some souvenirs, small ones. You're traveling, you're tight on the pocket, you can't get too many things. But then I would carefully collect so many things over the year, and when I would come home, my cousins would be happy. They would be waiting for the bag, always the bag, because they knew for each one of them there was something special. I think that was the moment I would never ever forget. That joy of coming home, and also the siblings, and no matter how old they grow, I just saw them as, little people like we were raised, and they're just hoping, okay, there is something for me also in here now that she's home. So their
Wow.
love, I realized as we grew up as adults, we became more friends than siblings, and each one of us carried that special power in their presence. And if few of us were there, but one was not there, that strong presence and what that presence brought with them was missing. So I think when I got home, it got completed in some way for them as well.
Wow, so beautiful. And when you returned, did you have a plan, an idea what the next steps would be for you?
No, Taylorji. Then I actively started looking for institutions where I could now get back to a kind of job where I could serve the nation. So I started preparing for public services. We have the uh, UPSC, Public Service Commission. They have the exams, civil services exams. And for once, I thought I could get into the Indian Foreign Services. I just thought, okay, let's understand about diplomacy, and let's see if the government services help us. But then, growing up in a developing nation, there's a lot of competition, and then I also did not have the opportunity to study full time. It was always where I had to work, and I had been working for then so many years. So with the savings, I could take some time off where I started studying. Eventually, the savings started getting shorter and shorter, and then there was the worry, oh, it's first attempt, one year without work is over. Now I have to get through the examination in the next attempt. But interestingly, my optional was philosophy. And then, more than taking pressure of the study, I was enjoying the study for a long time, because it didn't feel heavy for me. It just felt like what I love doing. I just had to structure it and ensure somehow what I have to do for a living, and where my soul is, all of that comes together. So second time when I gave the examination, I realized I was very close to the cutoff marking. And then I knew I could not afford one more year without work. Then I had to get back to universities, teaching in the teaching role. Now that's when my teaching journey begins. As an employee, the person who could easily be covered in others. In teaching now, actually, I start speaking with a certain confidence. As a woman, with all that I have gathered along the way, all of that starts surfacing up as I start getting a position at the university.
Did you feel that you stepped into that role with that natural confidence?
Yes, because it felt very natural for me to teach, and that was something I had never imagined I would. But circumstances were such where I could not be in a role which had certain, marketing targets, or a kind of pressure that would take my attention off the examinations. So then I thought of a role where I was still teaching. So studying was always good for me. I could study even in the campus while I was teaching.
And how long were you in that university or teaching for at that time?
Till the pandemic. So around 2 years, 18, 19, 20.
Wow.
3 years.
Amazing. And so during that time you were completing your studies, you were teaching, and then when the world opened up again, was there opportunities that presented themselves for you?
Yes, they did. But then I didn't want any of them, because in the pandemic again, I got more time to start working on certain translations. My sister had to come to Rishikesh for her yoga teacher's training, and I said, why do you want to go to Rishikesh? And if you want to go, why don't you go alone? She said, no, we don't know how our paths would be after this. Perhaps in a couple of years, you would have your own family. We would move out of the city, so all of us would go away. So let's take this one opportunity to take remote working. In the pandemic, we were working remotely, so let's go somewhere else and work where we are also practicing yoga. She was the one in the family then who would do 108 sun salutations very early on, my younger sister. And I was not very keen, but then I said, okay, we can do this. For me, always work meant discipline. So that idea of working on a holiday was not something I could buy very easily. But then she said, yes, you can work remotely while we are there. That's how then things started changing from there for me, from the pandemic.
And what was your first impression of Rishikesh?
Rishikesh was magical. Taylorji, I hardly any scooter, hardly 4 or 5 restaurants or cafe in Rishikesh, clear streets, empty streets. The weather was slow. I was in the month of July here, so that was still the onset of rain, and very quiet, pleasantly quiet.
And so at the time you've arrived at Rishikesh, your sister is practicing yoga and you were working remotely. How did the rest unfold?
Yes, so although we booked and we paid the school in advance before we left from home, 2 days before we could leave, she fell sick in a way where she could not travel. And now I had to take up the course on her behalf, because she had paid for the course, full fees and everything, the tickets were done. I was on the verge of cancelling it, but she said, no, this is the twist, as if it was meant to be for me. So she said, no, please go ahead, because this is a long time I have been planning this. I wanted you also to be there. So for me, please do this course. I said, I would not need the course, but I can just be there in the facility that you are, and I can explore the place on my own and write. I was always drawn to writing, so I could journal something, I could have my notes, get back to study. But then I had to travel instead of her. And that's when I come to Tapovan, and then the yoga school. All the rest of the schools are still closed. It's the pandemic. They are not working. They are not open. There's just one school that is inviting applications with very few students. So that was the yoga course also did not feel like a teacher's training course. It felt like a private course with only few people, and you could work all by yourself throughout the course.
Wow, I mean, it sounds, what a magical time. Rishikesh, pandemic, so quiet, such a contrast. And then it feels like you're in a private ashram receiving this teacher training.
Yes.
Wow. And even though you were taking up on your sister's behalf, how was that experience like for you?
For me, the first impression was this is luxury yoga, because what we were used to seeing in the practice of yoga was somebody would rent a space, a community space like a school hall or a social space where the people of that community would come together and practice, and it would usually be certain rounds of sun salutations with pranayam and meditation. And these were the people who would drop their children to school, and the teacher would keep changing every day. One day, one would lead the class, the other day, other would lead the class, and all adults, all of them are working, all of them have responsibilities, to be taken care, and yet they show up every day for practice in a big hall. They all shell out some funds, to pay the rent of that hall, and they practice their laughter yoga. They practice 108 sun salutations, Taylorji. Alignment only needed for one practice, that's sun salutation, and that would actually give them the benefit of 1.5 hour practice, because that was very intense. And then everybody would have very simple clothes, and it didn't look like they're doing something different. But then the teacher's training course looked like something fancy. This is not the yoga we are used to. traditionally practicing. Yoga is a community practice. It's simple, it's very affordable. It is something that makes you humble. It is not something that makes you have deeper attachment for the body. So I think that was a bit of a cultural shock, seeing the way the courses, Yoga Alliance teachers training courses were designed, customized in order to fit the growing, I think, $1 million yoga apparel industry. So the yoga mats expensive, the yoga clothing expensive. It had a certain status symbol. Yoga, for the first time, I realized, had body image attached to it. It had gender attached to it. So many things where I felt, no, this is not how yoga is. But okay, let us be open and see what brings.
Wow, what a contrast. So so what happens then now where you've completed the course and you've had this experience? What was the next steps in your journey?
Rishikesh perhaps was the moment where my life had to shift karmically. So all the obstacles which I was facing for many years to full-time transition onto the spiritual path, that was not happening. It happened while I was in Rishikesh. So not in the school, nothing to do with the teachers training course, but one random time, one of the days where I was taking a walk at the Ganga. That is when I thought that I should look for a teacher. I had teachers. I was not a beginner. I already had studied the texts, the philosophy, but I was in deep need for direction, and authentic direction. And that thought of finding a guru, the last guru, of course, not the first guru, but the last guru, the final, the only guru, one who opens the treasure chest for you and okay, this is it. I had a deep longing of having a guru. And Rishikesh, in a way, just surfaced it up. The longing which I did not know I had. All the images I saw from childhood as a 3-year-old, the image of Lahrima Shreya as a teacher, so many teachers, so many spiritual teachers that were all there somewhere here in Rishikesh. That longing was very strong. Now I need to find the person who will also not only give me the answers but also help me realize and experience it. Lived spirituality, not spoken spirituality, not discussed spirituality, lived and experienced spirituality. If it is samadhi, so be it, experiencing the samadhi, not thinking about samadhi. If it is moksha, then let us experience it. So this experiential, lived spirituality, and somebody who could offer an opportunity to me, to direct me, mentor me in some way. That is what Rishikesh gave me, that moment of, no, this cannot stop. Now I have to think about this.
So powerful. I mean, there's no better example than lived experience, and particularly within a guru. But I imagine finding a guru wouldn't be that easy.
No, the course got over. I had to go back again. And I knew this was a short time. But something changed in between. One of the walks at the Ganga, I thought of asking one of the saints who sat, those days you could see all the monks, all the sannyasis in Rishikesh walking freely everywhere. Orange, orange, orange everywhere. Now you don't see that. Yes, so if you were around the ashrams, you would see the Gangaji busy with all the monks and somebody who is there who is in the spiritual routine, who is not a tourist. Somebody practicing spiritual routine at Ganga. Their sandhya or offering water to the sun at the Ganga. These were the common views. And I thought of asking one of the saints. There was a small kutir, small hut around Gangaji, and he would often sit out and people would gather around him. And I just thought, before I go, let me just see if he can guide me to some place. Till that time, I had been to almost every ashram in Rishikesh, on the scooter as well. The answers I found were, we don't, teach women. Of course, they were all men monastery, male monks. So I realized there is no woman teacher for moksha. There is no woman teacher for asana, that's fine. But there is no woman teacher who is going to understand or help me understand how do I get here now. I know moksha, I have studied the scriptures, everything is there. Samadhi, show me, I'm here, I can devote my time, sit with you for as long as you want, but let's then practice samadhi. This I could not have one to one. So, being sent back from many places, even in Rishikesh, as you don't teach women, I said, okay, all right, all male monasteries. Then I thought of asking the saint on one of those days before I go back. So sometime if I would come back in the future to Rishikesh, I would find a teacher here, or then I was keen on going back to the southern part of India where our roots were still connected to the major spiritual ashrams, and then find a teacher there and live there. But I had to cancel out Rishikesh. So I was just, the last question was to cancel out. Okay, then I'm not looking for a teacher here. That's how I go to him and I offer my pranams. I say, Swamiji, I'm looking for guidance and I want to study. I said, I want to study. He said, what do you want to study? I said, the Vedas, the scriptures, all of it, in the raw, authentic form, in the most traditional form, in the discipline. And then he asked me, what are the Shastras? Taylorji, in Sanskrit I replied to him, a language which we know but we don't speak often. And I started speaking to him in Sanskrit. And for a moment I paused. I did not know how I answered something very deep and something very profound, something I could have never imagined, neither did I prepare. And he looked at me for a moment and he said, this is the place you should go tomorrow morning. You should go to my Guruji, the monk's Guruji. And I said, okay, but then I was trembling because these scriptures or the studies that I were into, they were not away from me anymore. They were within me. And I just needed the right energy to ask the question, the monk to ask a question. Perhaps anybody else would have asked that question, the answer would have not come out. But you see the energy. He asked that question and I instantly replied. And I realized this is not something I have prepared for, which means I'm carrying it from somewhere. Then eventually it led to going to the ashram next day. Then there's some part how I meet my teacher, and then I have to also come back home. My parents are waiting. They are keen on helping me then find a prospect for marriage. So all material opportunities are on one side and the most profound spiritual practice is on the other side. And I find myself at the crossroads now. What do I do? Because this one decision is either going to materially help me, the family of course, and the community, and then no looking back. You can attain anything you want in the world. You can become anybody. And on one side, this is not the first time you are in Rishikesh. This is not the first time all of this is happening. And a sense of finding something lost, nothing new, but that was already there with me. That crossroad I find myself onto, and then I head back home from Rishikesh. After a while, with much more clarity, I return here. In between, I translated a text, Ashtavakra Gita, for one of the monks. He wanted a translation to be edited into English and worked upon it. So when I go back home, I am meditating on Advaita Vedanta, writing. The meditation continues. And I send the email to him. He says, do it one more time. I said, okay, now I have to do it all over. That means something is missing. So one of the most profound texts that answers the question, who am I? Where am I? what is the purpose of life, that which carries the gist of Advaita Vedanta, the final philosophy, the final point where you have the complete understanding. A text which discusses this understanding, I go over it about 18 times. Almost all day back home, remotely working, taking 2 or 3 university classes, and rest of the time I'm on the laptop working. And if something is shifting in me, every time I'm rewriting, I'm going back and forth through the conversation between sage Ashtavakra and Janaka, who is a king. So the Ashtavakra Gita is a narrative, it's a dialogue between a king and a liberated sage. And the king wants to attain moksha, but he has to fulfill his dharma as well towards the society. So how the longing for spirituality can rise when you are the chief of your own species, when you are in abundance. So this understanding that spirituality, the longing for spiritual practices does not come from traumatic circumstances. They also come in intense, abundant circumstances. The detachment comes from excessiveness also, and scarcity also. So going through the Ashtavakra Gita, I have more understanding of then this detachment that comes after abundance. So it's very clear for me to make a decision. I don't want the material abundance, because ultimately this state is going to continue. It's not going to fulfill me anymore. I'm very, very happy to find that answer. But the next problem now, how do I convince my parents, a young woman, to leave the home and just say, I'm here for moksha? You want to become anything? No. You want to go anywhere? No. You have nothing to become. You have nowhere to go. You are where you are only to realize there in the...
Wow. That is absolutely incredible. I mean, talking to that saint, asking the question to the saint, and the saint opening the door to your own remembering, and then standing there at that crossroads and having the two completely polarizing life paths.
Yes.
But then continuing on the journey and knowing that there is no other way.
Yes.
How did you bring that to your parents?
In the beginning, it was difficult. But then I knew I had to convince my sister, once she's better, to come for a teacher's training course. Now it was the other way around. I was convincing her to come to Rishikesh. And I said, you should go once in a while. It was difficult, Taylorji, because they could not understand why I wanted to leave all of it behind. I had been a child who excelled at everything, who would often make parents, the good kid, you can say, who always, the parents don't ever have to worry about anything when it comes to this child. But now they were confused after years of studying, working, finally where I could professionally also have a good position, why I wanted to give it all up. However, they were also open to understanding that this is possible, because it was in the family. My uncle and his maternal uncle, all of them had been on the quest of Advaita Vedanta, that is the quest of the self. Both of them, in every generation there was one seeker. It's just that they had to come to terms in accepting that it was not the son or any other son anymore. It is the daughter this time who is having this quest.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And what an honor.
Yes.
So you've now shared this with your parents, this acceptance is there, and then do you directly head back to Rishikesh?
No, I waited for a couple of months home, because I knew I had to show them, not tell them. So first was to bring my sister to Rishikesh for a course. Eventually then she would speak with them, not me anymore. So I wanted to go indirectly, not the direct persuasion. But I had changed, Taylorji. All of it made sense. I realized not a single moment was waste in my life. Not a single experience was wrong or bad. All of it all came together. And I also knew that if my longing was strong, nobody would stop it. Eventually, I would be where I was supposed to be.
That's so beautiful, because I mean, it's like a tapestry woven together.
Yeah.
Each-
And faith.
and
Faith also. The things
Wow.
will work out. One more time, I knew that I am here, so there is somebody who is now finally going to guide me to see or meet or just help me arrive at the truth. So this time also I knew it would be taken care. It would not be easy, but eventually it would be taken care.
All wonderful last preparations lead us to exactly where we're meant to be.
Yes.
So then, when you then took your sister back to Rishikesh, you're in Rishikesh, then how does it work then? Now you found a guru, a teacher. How does that then, those next steps, how do you take those?
The condition to learning was for me to leave behind everything and study with the guru in person, because the guru was in ekanta, that is anonymous, liberated ones. You will not see them out. They would not want to be out there unless it's necessary. So he lived a he still lives he has his private space, a very private life. And I knew that I have taken the darshan, I have seen him, but I have to study now, and that study won't happen in any other way. I just have to show up in the monastery. So after my sister was here, she also then got the opportunity to meet the one who would be my future husband. And he taught her during her course. And then she also sought guidance and counsel from him for her spiritual path, how Rishikesh looked like, because she had so many questions. Until he answered her, because he was also studying from the same guru for whom I had made a translation, and the other guru with whom I was supposed to study, he was also studying there. So she found a sense of confidence in verification of truth with him, and whether it would be a nice decision for me to leave all behind and be here. He was then moving to Kerala for his own further study with his gurus of Kerala. So he said to my sister, he said, let her be. I have met her and she knows what she's doing. So it's time where the family trusts her and she should continue with her path. And then he left for his own study with his gurus in the southern part of India. How fascinating it was that my sister actually trusted his words, and then she also spoke to my parents. I would always credit her for making this possible, for always trusting my decision, and for my parents also to give away their daughter, not knowing whether she would ever come back as a child or as a monk. Would the child even recognize them again, or would even appreciate all the efforts they have taken over the years? So leaving your child on the spiritual path is in a way giving up. You don't know whether you will feel it's your same child again. So she convinced them and they finally agreed. That's how then I leave everything behind. I come to Rishikesh.
Wow, that's incredible. So now that this surrender, this release is there, the acceptance,
Oh, yes.
thanks to your sister and her support, you're in Rishikesh.
Yes.
And you have completely aligned yourself with the spiritual path.
Yes.
How was that experience, knowing now that you are fully committed and you have a teacher, you have everything that you had wanted, and also now have the opportunity to be shown?
It was a moment of also laughing out loud, because life turned in a way you never imagined. This would be the grand finale. This would be the truth. This is what you are going to do. So when you realize this was the truth of your life, the seed, most important karmic seed was this seed. Everything else was to ensure you get here. And then laughing out loud, saying, this was the truth of my life. Now I just have to live it all life. I utterly useless for anything else. That moment of smiling over one's own idea of life, idea of the world, and those different ideas. I think that moment of truth not only made me feel blessed, but also to know that yes, I was taken care all this time, and now this is the truth. Very early on, I have surrendered. Let's see where it takes me.
Wow. How what a blessing, what an honor. That is
Yes.
incredible. And so how, for everybody listening, what does it look like to be on completely devoted to the spiritual path throughout daily practices and studies, as you said, and educating yourself and absorbing completely in that? And how does that look?
Yes. Studying with the teacher, I realized I was the only female student sitting in a hall full of monks, Taylorji. They all had given up, I think, most prestigious positions professionally, or perhaps a lot of abundance left behind. Most of them I study with would be the future heads of different monasteries, monastic orders, and ashrams in India. And all of them were in reverence to a great teacher who himself had come from a lineage so rich, studying with the greatest of masters. I felt very small in that very big hall, and I was wondering what good did I do that I was here in one corner, just one girl sitting there and studying Sanskrit, the teacher giving instruction in Sanskrit, also Hindi at times. And Sanskrit was, I was not used to listening to Sanskrit so much. So for the first 2-3 months, I had absolutely no clue what is going on. But I just had to show up. The appearance changed. You could not have any attachment with the body, because that is the first thing you drop. Attachment with the body, objectification of your own body, looking at yourself as an object, turning more towards the subject. So from the body, then coming very simply dressed into the monastery, in quiet studying without disturbing the monks and the environment, returning back. Every day this was the routine. My then friend had also come back, who would be my husband in the future, from Kerala, and then he would also join for the study many times. I got the opportunity to discuss what I was studying, and I realized now I meet a man who also is on the same path, who also has all the answers to the question, and he's free. He's there, and he's still continuing listening about his life also. I felt I was not the only one. He was not in monkhood. He was on the verge of, deciding, because he also had realized this is the truth for him. At a point where you can't do anything else but meditate and contemplate on the nature of the self. You cannot speak to others anything else about yourself but only themselves. So that state we had reached, and I found somebody to ask questions and talk about what I was studying. That friendship went really well for us, with no other thoughts, just one common goal in reverence to our Guru.
Beautiful.
Then eventually, when the thought would still from parents would arise, what about marriage? What about a wedding? It's not safe for you. After we go, how would you be in a monastic life? You don't know the world out there. You had a loving father. You had hardly seen, any other kind of evil that would meet you. Fairly, you were protected in a family system. Out of the family system, it's all ambiguous. You do not know how to respond yet there. And speaking with the Guru, then we had the direction. We should eventually be married to continue the path we are on to. A marriage that was solely meant for continuing the scriptures and service towards the same truth together.
Wow. I mean, what a union to be blessed by the Guru, guided, and then also to it deepen your spiritual practice.
Yes.
Wow. So does that mean, referring back to what we spoke about earlier, does that mean now that you have met somebody in such a purest way that you could carry old traditions?
Yes, I could all carry traditions. It didn't feel like a wedding, Taylorji. We were married at the banks of River Ganga, and his parents, because he had been out, he left home very early. They were happy that, oh, he found a place, where he could continue his path without disturbing anybody else. And also, few people on the banks of River Ganga were a witness to that union. That day, the all five different species, as I mentioned, the animals ate, the birds ate, the humans were a part of the celebration. So it felt like the earth was celebrating. And what a simple wedding, just to be on the banks of Ma Ganga, in about less than 40 people. That also, some of them were students, close students to us, where I was teaching in the schools in Rishikesh.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
So now another door opened after the marriage, where the husband wanted me to continue full time. And this marriage was unlike any other Indian marriage. There was no expectation. This was new for me. And I said, truly, I am blessed because I just have to continue. He was in brahmacharya, that is still, strict practice of celibacy when we were studying, and certain scriptures still require us to practice celibacy when we go through them. The mind has to be pure to hold those texts. So now here I had a husband who just created the ashram out of the home, and the marriage also was, then I realized, to support the truth I was seeking and to support my study. He took the responsibility of riding me together. We would go to the ashram in the morning, study, and then we would go and teach in different yoga schools. So we would help seekers who come to Rishikesh to study yoga realize the truth in a very simple way while they are on the mat. Just plant the seeds, not expect anything to happen, but while they are here for a spiritual holiday, just plant few seeds that would eventually sprout and help them. So in order to purify the perception towards yoga and to continue the legacy of Rishikesh, we still give classes in few schools in Rishikesh now, in Tapovan.
Wow. I mean, what a pure embodiment to follow your path, not to the point where you completely dedicate your life. Then you meet somebody in the most purest form, connect in a union, and then have the graciousness and support to deepen and continue your path.
Yes.
Where you can continue to plant the seeds, but also continue to learn and deepen your own practice.
Yes, Taylor. These are the blessings. I have been very blessed in terms of everything. I think all the smaller things I sacrificed perhaps on the way, they purified, and every person is a reward for it. Even the marriage was a reward for smaller acts of kindness and compassion you feel nobody's watching. But yes, the universe looks at those moments, very small moments, where you make decisions that help the other than yourself. So all of them culminated as blessings, I feel, to have this path continued.
Wow, what a complimentary knowing for you completely committing to the path.
Yes.
And staying true to yourself. Wow. Is bringing up to this moment now, so this brings you into the present moment. This is where you are currently, still in Rishikesh, still teaching, still sharing your wisdom and knowledge, but also continuing your path and practice.
Yes.
Wow. It has been an incredible story, Bhagyashree. Thank you so much for sharing everything and all that you do and all that you give and share with the world. I would like to now enter the second part of the podcast, which is called Your Medicine. So taking a moment to reflect on what has been your greatest medicine or greatest teaching within your personal story.
The teaching is to trust what is happening for you, to completely trust life wholly and fully without a doubt, to surrender to life itself if you are living surrender to life itself, and you see what the life makes out of you, something you cannot imagine. To surrender completely.
Bhagyashree, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your story.
Thank you, Taylor Ji, for holding this space for us and helping us reflect back and go through those beautiful times and moments in on our spiritual path where everybody trusted the decisions I made, and that is the reason I am able to extend this service of scriptures to other yoga practitioners and teachers. The society systems, when they hold this space for women, when families hold such space for women, when partners and fathers hold such space for women, we have women in the society who are in the best of their femininity and who are happy living, who are grateful every day for the life they have. So I'm eternally also grateful to all everybody, all the schools also who have given me the opportunity to take classes and interact with people who come from the world, because now, being there at some point, I know where they come from, what are the challenges there. So I'm very, very grateful to everybody who has made this journey possible, and to you for having this conversation with us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Wow, what a truly mesmerizing story. From the moment we sat down and Babaji started sharing her childhood experiences and reflections, I knew that this was going to be quite the tale. And I was trying to put myself in that environment and experience of growing up in a small village and having a grandmother as such influence, particularly the way that she showed up for a community, showed up for the people of that community day in, day out, and how she said she followed her everywhere she went, and that seed was planted, and she was able to absorb not only that energy, but that value system. That was one of the most remarkable things for me, was the importance of value, and not only how that shows up within the individual, but how it shows up in a union, how it shows up in every step that you take as an intention to how you're going to connect with whatever it is you're choosing to do. And that same thing with education. It rung so true that in countries I visited, and I've spent a bit of time in India, how prevalent it is when it comes to the deep gratitude and appreciation for something like education. It's an honor. It's an absolute privilege to be educated and have that opportunity. And when you talk to somebody, particularly as my experience from India, they're so deeply proud of it. And it's so amazing because it can easily in the West just be overlooked as just a part of the system or part of the requirements that somebody has to do. But I listened to Babaji in the way that she spoke about her education and the pride that came with that and a lot of honor. To me, I thought it was just so beautiful. And how that evolved within then her studies and then receiving a scholarship because of her hard work and dedication, which completely opened the doors to all of her new possibilities. Imagining what it would be like to move from a small village to a place like Chennai and having that freedom, that autonomy. Hearing the way that she spoke about having a scooter, a Scoopy was just so beautiful. Because I feel like we can all reflect on that when we had our first somewhat mode of transport, and that freedom that it created within, because it felt like the opportunities were now endless. And the first little taste of yoga, and then finishing off her master's, staying an extra year, continuing to give back to the community and be a part of that space and creation, to then going overseas. And I thought it was so special how, she reflected on the fact that she never thought about it as a young girl to be overseas, and now here she was visiting all these countries in the West and Poland, how she reflected on that and the people and the culture. And I mean, it's traveling really just opens up your mind and your heart to how other people live, how they see the world, what are their values, are they similar? She said if there's an extra warmth that comes from people who live closer to the sea and in warmer climates. And I mean, it's, as I described in the podcast, life and experience is such a tapestry, and it's so beautiful how this kind of textile comes together because of what you've seen, what you've felt, and what you've experienced. And I loved how in the undercurrent of it all was always this spiritual path. And the little stepping stones that were taken along that path were slowly leading her to where she currently is and where she will continue to go. And thinking about it, where you think about like a deep, rich culture, particularly around union and marriage. And I loved how she shared how it operated in the past, but still having to sit with your parents and tell them about the crossroad in which you're at and know that, and I love the way she described it, once you committed to either one, then that was the path that you had chosen. And it's so easy to think about how you can easily be influenced by the people closest to us and end up making decisions for other people. And for her to stay so true to herself in that spiritual path and calling, I think just speaks exactly into the truth of the woman that she is. And then to return back to Rishikesh and be there with a guru, a guide, and somebody who will walk her through step by step the teachings of life's deepest questions. I can't imagine how challenging that would have been to go door to door, monastery to monastery, and ask for guidance and help as a woman. And when I heard that part of the story, I could feel that strength. I could feel that determination and that there was no other option. But it still takes so much courage to be able to step into that. And then for her in the monastery to meet her husband, and as I described, in that complete purity, I think that there is already such an inner foundation as what both individuals are, but to harmonize that into a marriage, I think is one of the more remarkable things that I've heard. And I was very fortunate to meet Bhagyashree when I was in Rishikesh and I was doing my 300-hour yoga teacher training, and she was a philosophy teacher. I was completely captivated by her presence, her wisdom, her generosity, and the way that she carries and holds herself. It is such an honor to have been able to sit with her, record this podcast, and once again be reminded of the depths that a person can go on their own personal spiritual path. She is an incredible inspiration to myself, and I know so many others. And so I feel not only grateful, but I feel deeply blessed that this has become what it is. So thank you so much, Bhagyashree, for you and your path and all that you share so graciously along the way. So there you have it, the story of how one woman not only followed her calling, but received the guidance and support of the people around her. What a beautiful reminder that without the support of others, we wouldn't be where we are today. If you would like to connect with Bhagyashree's teachings, click the link in the description. I personally work with men who are tired of performing, and from the outside it looks like they have it all together, but on the inside they are quietly falling apart. If this resonates, head over to plumplanes.com or at plumplanes, and there you'll find more information about how I can help and also the men's circles that I run. My name is Taylor Jardine, and this is Your Story, Your Medicine. Thank you for taking the time to listen.